Africa was never isolated. Between 1500 and 1800, it was a crossroads. Caravans crossed the Sahara carrying gold and salt. Ships sailed the Indian Ocean linking Africa to Arabia, India, and even China. Ideas, religions, and cultures moved with them. From the mighty Songhai Empire to the Swahili coast, Sub-Saharan Africa helped shape the early modern world. In this episode, we explore how African civilizations rose, governed, worshipped, and traded during a period of profound global connection and growing disruption. We begin in West Africa, where Askia Muhammad I transformed Songhai into a centralized Islamic state, and where cities like Timbuktu became global centers of learning. We then move east to the Swahili coast, ports like Kilwa and Zanzibar, where African, Arab, and Asian merchants built one of the world's most vibrant trade networks. Along the way, we examine belief systems that shaped everyday life. Islam in Songhai, Coptic Christianity in Ethiopia, and long-standing African spiritual traditions rooted in ancestors and the natural world. But this story also carries a darker turn. Powerful states like the Asante Empire became entangled in the transatlantic slave trade, linking African politics to European demand and reshaping the continent forever. This is not a story of a single Africa, but of many Africas, alive with power, faith, trade, and consequence. And its legacy is still with us today.
Imagine the Niger River flowing wide and powerful, lined with bustling markets and scholars debating philosophy. Now picture the Swahili coast, where ships from Arabia, India, and even China docked to trade gold, ivory, and spices. Between 1500 and 1800, Sub-Saharan Africa was alive with kingdoms, cultures, and connections that linked the continent to the wider world. In West Africa, the Songhai Empire dominated the Niger River Valley. Its capital, Gao, and the legendary city of Timbuktu became centers of learning, trade, and culture. But after the Moroccan invasion in 1591, the empire fractured, giving rise to smaller states like the Bambara Empire of Segu, which used the river as both a lifeline and a political model. Meanwhile, in East Africa, the Swahili coast stretched from Mogadishu down to Sofala. Cities like Kilwa, Mombasa, and Zanzibar were wealthy, cosmopolitan ports where merchants from Africa, Arabia, Persia, India, and China exchanged goods and ideas. This thriving network, however, began to decline when the Portuguese arrived in the 16th century, seizing ports and diverting trade. One of Africa's greatest rulers, Askia Muhammad I, turned Songhai into the strongest empire in West Africa. He standardized weights and measures, organized a professional army, encouraged Islamic scholarship, making Timbuktu a hub for Quranic study, law, and science. Askia Muhammad was a devout Muslim, but he balanced tradition and innovation, much like leaders in Europe and Asia at the same time. Religion shaped identity, politics, and daily life. In Songhai, Islam was dominant among rulers and merchants, linking them to North Africa and beyond. In Ethiopia, the highlands remained a stronghold of Coptic Christianity, tracing its roots to the early centuries of the faith. In Asante, Ashanti, and among many peoples, animism thrived, belief in spirits of nature and ancestors. These traditions coexisted and sometimes blended, showing Africa's diverse spiritual landscape. The rise of the Ashanti Empire in present-day Ghana reflected both cultural power and tragic choices. The Ashanti became wealthy and militarily strong, trading gold, kola nuts, and enslaved people. Like other West African states, they supplied captives to European traders in exchange for firearms, textiles, and luxury goods. This trade devastated communities, reshaped societies, and tied West Africa to the brutal transatlantic slave trade, which would eventually fuel abolitionist movements centuries later. On the Swahili coast, trade created a blended culture: African, Arab, Persian, Indian, even Chinese. Kiswahili, the language, fused Bantu with Arabic. Towns displayed coral stone mosques, carved wooden doors, and vibrant marketplaces. This cosmopolitan life declined under Portuguese domination, but its legacy remains in East Africa's culture and identity. Geography mattered. Rivers like the Niger sustained empires. The Indian Ocean monsoon winds powered trade. culture flourished. Art, music, oral traditions, and architecture reflected both local identity and global exchange. Power shifted, from Songhai to Segu in the west, from Swahili city-states to Portuguese outposts in the east. So, what does Africa's story between 1500 and 1800 teach us? That African empires were not isolated. They were central players in global trade, religion, and culture. But these interactions also brought challenges: invasions, the fragmentation of empires, and the devastation of the slave trade. If you were a merchant on the Swahili coast or a scholar in Timbuktu, how would you describe Africa's role in the world at that time?
Between 1500 and 1800, Sub-Saharan Africa was reshaping itself at breakneck speed. Empires rose and fell, trade routes shifted dramatically, religions blended in fascinating ways, and European contact intensified like never before. We're diving into 5 incredible regions to tell this story: the mighty Songhai Empire, the gold-rich Asante Kingdom, the complex Congo Basin, resilient Ethiopia, and the emerging Zulu nation. Through politics, religion, and trade, we'll uncover how this pivotal period transformed an entire continent. Politics: 5 models of power. In West Africa, the Songhai Empire represented centralized Islamic monarchy at its height. Rulers like Askia the Great created a bureaucracy with governors, taxes, and armies. But by 1591, after a Moroccan invasion, Songhai collapsed into smaller states. Further south, the Asante Kingdom emerged. Power rested with the Asante, but it was also spiritual. The golden stool symbolized the soul of the nation, uniting chiefs into a confederation.
We were united by Ose Tutu, our king, and Ocampo Anoki, our priest. They called down the golden stool from the heavens, the soul of our people. As long as the stool stood, the Ashanti would stand as one. The golden stool was more than a throne. It was unity, identity, destiny. But destiny soon collided with a new force: Europe.
At first, European traders came for gold and ivory, but soon they came for something else: people.
They brought muskets, rum, cloth, and iron. They asked for captives in return. Our king saw power in this exchange. Weapons built our armies. Armies brought more captives. The circle continued. It was the triangular trade. Europe sent goods, Africa sent people, and the Americas sent sugar and profit.
The Ashanti became one of the most feared military powers in West Africa. Their conquests against the Denkira, Fante, and others filled their coffers.
Warriors marched under golden banners. Each victory brought honor and captives. Those captives were sold to traders waiting by the coast. The empire grew stronger, but the land grew emptier. Families disappeared, villages burned. The wealth of a few became the suffering of many.
By the 1800s, winds of change swept across the world. Europe turned against the very trade it had built.
Ashanti leaders faced a painful truth. Our gold and our pride could not hide the shame that haunted us. We had traded our brothers and sisters for guns. The British came this time not as traders, but conquerors. The empire that once sold power now faced colonization.
In Central Africa, the Kingdom of Congo stood out. The man of Congo ruled a hereditary monarchy with provinces and officials, but Portuguese contact deeply altered its politics, with European guns and alliances fueling internal struggles. Turning east, Ethiopia remained a Christian empire. Its emperors traced their lineage back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. The Orthodox Church was central to power, helping Ethiopia maintain independence and identity against foreign pressures. Finally, in southern Africa, the Zulu had not yet become an empire, but the foundations were being laid among Nguni chiefdoms. In the early 1800s, Shaka would transform them into a militarized, centralized state. Their later rise shows the direction southern Africa was moving.
Before the arrival of Islam or Christianity, Africa was not a land without faith. It was a continent alive with spiritual systems that connected people to their ancestors, their land, and the mysterious forces of nature. In every drumbeat, ritual dance, and carved symbol lay a story of how Africans understood the universe, long before the first mosque or church appeared. Across pre-colonial Africa, religion was not something separate from life. It was life. Every harvest, birth, war, or rainfall was seen through the lens of the spirit world. Africans believed in a supreme creator, distant and powerful, but daily life centered on lesser deities, nature spirits, and ancestors. Among the Yoruba, divine forces called Orishas guided destiny. In Central Africa, Bantu peoples crafted sacred figures called Nkisi to channel spiritual power. And in Southern Africa, the San and Zulu spoke of a sky god who created life and withdrew, leaving humans to keep the balance. To many Africans, ancestors were not gone. They were present. Through offerings and songs, families honored them to ensure harmony and protection. This was not worship of the dead, but reverence for continuity, the living and the dead as one unbroken chain. Kings of the Ashanti, Congo, and Benin claimed power through the blessing of their ancestors. To rule unjustly was to risk spiritual disgrace. Before written scripture, the land itself was the Bible. Mountains, rivers, and trees carried spirit. Sacred groves served as temples. Fire symbolized transformation, and ironworking became an act of creation. Priests, healers, and diviners, known as Inganga Babalawo or Sangoma, interpreted the will of the spirits. They healed the sick, blessed the crops, and guided the people through wisdom passed down by word of mouth. From the deserts of North Africa to the rainforests of the Congo, spiritual diversity thrived. The Berbers honored mountain and desert spirits. In Nubia and Ethiopia, faith blended with ancient Egyptian and early Christian traditions. The Dogon of Mali mapped the stars and told cosmic stories of creation. And the Shona of Zimbabwe built Great Zimbabwe, both fortress and sacred temple, where spirit and stone met. Even after Islam and Christianity spread, traditional beliefs endured. Many African Muslims and Christians still honor ancestors or consult healers. The new faiths may have changed rituals, but not the rhythm of the African spirit. At its core, traditional African religion taught harmony with the earth, with community, and with the unseen. Before the cross and the crescent, there was the drum and the flame, symbols of an Africa whose spirit still speaks, if we're willing to listen.
As trade expanded and outsiders made deeper contact with the continent, Africa's spiritual map began to shift. Islam moved south with merchants and scholars, while Christianity arrived on new winds from Europe. Yet across the continent, these faiths didn't simply replace older traditions. They mixed, adapted, and evolved. Out of this encounter came unique forms of worship that reflected both African heritage and global connection. In Congo, Catholicism arrived with the Portuguese, yet it blended with African traditions, saints linked to ancestral spirits, crucifixes carved with African features, and sacred Nkisi reinterpreted through Christianity. In Ethiopia, Christianity was already ancient. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church traced its roots back over 1,000 years. Rock-hewn churches at Lalibela, liturgies in the Ge'ez language, and traditions tied to the Ark of the Covenant gave Ethiopia a strong cultural identity that resisted outside domination. For over 3,000 years, the Ark of the Covenant has stirred faith and mystery alike. The Hebrew Bible says it was built at Mount Sinai, carried through deserts and battles, and enshrined in Solomon's temple until the Babylonian conquest in 586 BCE, when it vanished from history. Ethiopian tradition offers a different ending. In the Kebra Nagast, the Queen of Sheba's son, Menelik I, journeys to Jerusalem and, according to legend, brings the Ark to Ethiopia, guided by God. Today, the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum is said to guard that very relic. One monk, the keeper of the Ark, devotes his life to its protection. None but he may look upon it. Across Ethiopia, every Orthodox church keeps a symbolic replica called a tablet. During the festival of Timkat, priests carry them through the streets beneath silk cloths and jeweled umbrellas, a living echo of the Ark's journey. Whether artifact or allegory, the Ark of the Covenant remains central to Ethiopian faith and identity, linking the ancient world of Solomon to the highlands of Africa. The Zulu, by contrast, followed indigenous religion. They believed ancestors, the Amadlozi, guided and protected the living. Rituals, sacrifices, and the work of healers, Sangomas and Inyangas, maintained balance between the community, the natural world, and the spirits. Trade was the lifeblood of these societies. Songhai prospered from trans-Saharan caravans carrying gold, salt, and manuscripts through cities like Timbuktu. The Asante built wealth on gold and kola nuts, and later on the Atlantic slave trade. Firearms and textiles from Europe transformed their politics and warfare. Congo at first traded salt, copper, and cloth, but Portuguese contact shifted the economy toward enslaved people. Firearms and luxury goods came in, while internal conflict grew worse. In the east, Ethiopia and the Swahili coast connected to the Indian Ocean world. Through Red Sea ports, ivory, gold, and slaves were traded for spices, textiles, and goods from Arabia, India, and China. Southern Africa, meanwhile, relied on regional exchanges, cattle, iron, and grain, which laid the groundwork for the later Zulu state. How does this affect the world today? Because the legacies of 1500 to 1800 Africa still shape our modern world. Gold, ivory, and human lives crossed oceans to build Europe's wealth, and the inequalities born from that trade still ripple through global economies today. It's important to remember, slavery existed long before European ships arrived. Across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, systems of servitude had endured for centuries, but the transatlantic slave trade changed everything. It transformed a regional practice into a global industry, one rooted in race and profit. Millions were torn from their homes, their cultures erased, their labor sold to build empires oceans away. Consider the once mighty kingdom of Congo. Centuries later, under Belgian rule, those same lands were ravaged again, through rubber, resource extraction, and atrocities that scarred generations. Even today, descendants of that region toil in lithium pits, mining the minerals that power our modern devices. The tools of exploitation have evolved, but the patterns remain hauntingly familiar, and yet, out of oppression came endurance. Across continents, the African diaspora carried languages, music, and faith that reshaped global culture. From samba to gospel, from the blues to hip-hop. The same creative force that once built kingdoms now drives global movements for justice and identity. Africa's story isn't just about what was taken, it's about what endures, resilience, resistance, and rhythm. The rhythm of a people whose spirit still shapes our world today. Between 1500 and 1800, Africa stood at the crossroads of change. Songhai's scholars, Asante's warriors, Congo's conversions, and Ethiopia's faith all reflected a continent in motion. And from these shifting sands, new powers like the Zulu would soon rise. Africa's story is one of endurance, innovation, and identity, proof that the world's history was never written in one voice. This is Histoscript, where legend, history, and belief come together. Subscribe to uncover the stories behind the world's enduring mysteries.